Hey everyone, okay, I'm going to do a quick video. This is something that comes up really regularly on my Snapchat. So if you're not following my Snapchat, BrianK019, head over there. I open it up every day. We can ask me questions back and forth. Basically, do you need to cycle creatine and which is the best creatine to use? So I've done videos in the past on creatine, the ones that I like, and different variation videos. This one is basically going to be how should you cycle it and which one's the best one to use. So basically, if you've been following me long enough, you know that I'm not a massive fan of creatine monohydrate. There are different forms. There's monohydrate, ethyl ester, hydrochloride, and trimalate. I'm not a massive fan of monohydrate, even though it is the most scientifically researched version of creatine because it's the one that's been out the longest and it's the original form. But there's certain ways that you need to take it that I'm not a massive fan of. Number one, with creatine, you've got to load it, creatine monohydrate. So it means that you've got to saturate the cells. So creatine is basically, if you think of it like an empty 2 liter water bottle, a 2 liter water bottle, what creatine does is it pulls water into the muscle. So it's like loading up a 2 liter bottle with water. When you have no water in it, you can crush it and change it and do whatever you want with the bottle. But when you load it with water, it becomes very dense and very hard. That's what happens with creatine. It pulls water underneath the muscle, so it means that you're going to be stronger, so you can lift heavier weight for the same reps, or you can do more reps with the same weight that you normally lift because there's water underneath the muscle and it's made it stronger. That's how creatine works. All forms of creatine. For monohydrate, you have to load that. So basically it comes to what's called a saturation point, where you've got to load it with say 20 grams of creatine, so 5 grams 4 times a day, and you've got to load the cells, so fill the water bottle, and then the maintenance dose is like just keeping the water bottle full. That's how creatine works, full stop. So if you think of it like the water bottle, it's loading it up full of water and then keeping it loaded so that it's strong at all times so that you consistently have that water underneath the muscle. For monohydrate, you need to load it, whereas the other versions you don't. It will automatically start to saturate. And the things with monohydrate too, you will eventually get to a saturation point if it just takes longer. So once you fill it up to say the 2 liters, you can't overfill it. It doesn't overspill. So regardless of whether you do that quickly by loading it for 10 days at 20 grams or do it for 30 days at 5 or 10 grams, you're going to get to a saturation point both ways. It just means that it will take longer to work. That on top of you need a normal insulin transporter, so some form of creatine transporter for maximum absorption. With water, I can't remember reading exactly what the percentage of the absorption was, but it's about 40% I think, where you're only getting about 40% of your creatine if you take it with water. You need to take it with a transporter to get the 90-95% absorption in the muscle. So a transporter is something sugary that's non-acidic. So glucose, or some version of dextrose or some simple sugar that will allow you to uptake it. So it does mean spike in blood sugars, it does mean spike in insulin to get the full absorption of the creatine. It also can't be acidic, so you can't use orange juice, you can't use apple juice because it's going to break down some of the creatine. So you need to be really careful what you load it with, and you got to work through your maintenance, you got to work through your saturation point, you got to load it. With creatine ethyl ester, with creatine trimalate, with creatine hydrochloride, you don't need to do any of that. You can take it with water and you don't need to load it. So that's why they're my preferences. Personally, I love creatine ethyl ester. It's nearly the same price as monohydrate. Doesn't need a saturation point. You can literally just take it with water and you'll get full absorption and it will work great. The only thing is it tastes horrible. Like that's the only trade-off on it. There's not a big taste off monohydrate. Ethyl ester, because of the ester attached, tastes horrible. So you just literally neck it with a small amount of water and you're good to go. That's my personal favorite, but hydrochloride and trimalate do the same job. In terms of cycling then, personally, I didn't cycle on and off creatine for years. So unless you have a kidney issue, because creatine doesn't damage your kidneys, but because obviously the extra creatine and the creatinine that it can create can put extra strain on the kidneys. If you only have one kidney or if you have issues with your kidneys, it can further complicate things, but it's not going to give you kidney issues in the right dose and it's not going to cause you any damage, providing you don't have any underlying or genetic problem with kidneys or you only have one of them. If you do, use creatine with caution. I had one of my best friends has one kidney, and I always tell him, I'm like, look, just don't stay away from creatine or talk to your doctor because you don't need to put that extra stress because your kidney's working hard as it is to do the job of two with just one place. So basically, unless you have an issue, it's not going to give you an issue. So cycling it, particularly if you don't eat a lot of red meat, means it's going to work for you year round. Like I went from the ages of 19 to 23 or 21 to 24, when I was going through teaching college and then working as a full-time teacher, I never cycled off creatine because I ate very little red meat. So I'm a massive creatine responder as it is. If I take creatine, I just go boof, because it pulls all the water underneath, and I don't eat a lot of red meat to begin with, so my body responds. Like, some people aren't creatine responders because they eat so much red meat, so they're saturating their cells with creatine through beef and through steak and through red meat, so they're not going to respond as well as somebody that doesn't eat any, you know. So that's one of the things as well to understand. If you're a creatine responder, if you have a lot of red meat in your diet and you're eating, you know, 2 or 3 portions of red meat every day, you're probably not going to respond as well to creatine as somebody that only eats chicken and fish. So understand that as well. In terms of cycling then, it's personal preference. I can only say what I've done, and I don't cycle creatine. I don't use it that often now because I get really big and I hold a lot of water and I get really swollen, and when I'm trying to perform better, I tend to stay away from it from that point of view. Also, when I run out, I forget to buy more, so that doesn't help either. But in terms of cycling, it is going to be down to personal preference. I didn't and had no damage, and as long as you don't have any underlying issues, you're going to be fine not cycling, and particularly if you don't eat a lot of red meat, because your body's not going to be producing that much creatine as it is. You're not going to be getting it from food, so you're going to be able to take the extra supplements. So I hope that helps. Stick with ethyl ester, my personal preference. You don't need to cycle it as such, as long as you have no underlying issue. And then make sure you're a creatine responder. So if you're eating a load of red meat, don't waste your money on creatine, because you're probably getting it from your red meat. Hope this video helps. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, I'll be replying to comments for the next 24 hours.